Thunder split the night above the Harrington mansion, the sound sharp enough to rattle the glass. "Don't touch my daughter." Christopher Harrington's voice lashed through the nursery like a blade. Elena Brooks froze, her hand still cradling the toddler who had just stopped crying. The little girl startled, then wailed again, piercing, terrified. The billionaire stormed forward, tearing the child from Elena's arms with a force that left her breathless. "Please," Elena gasped, her voice shaking. "She just fell asleep, I don't care," he snapped. "You're the help, not the mother." The baby screamed louder, flailing, her tiny fists trembling. Christopher's composure cracked as he rocked her awkwardly. "Why won't she stop?" he muttered. Elena spoke softly, steady despite the fear in her chest. "She only sleeps when she feels safe. Let me hold her." His jaw tightened. Pride fought reason. Then something inside him broke. He handed the baby back. The moment the child touched Elena's chest, the crying stopped. A hiccup, a sigh, silence. The little girl burrowed into her arms as if she'd finally found home. Christopher stood frozen, rain hammering the windows. His daughter feared him, but not the maid. Hours later, the house lay still. Elena sat on the rug, rocking gently, humming an old tune. Her blue uniform clung to her from sweat and tears. Mrs. Whitaker, the housekeeper, watched from the doorway, whispering, "She only sleeps with her." The words slid down the hallway like rumor. Morning came gray and heavy. Christopher sat at the long dining table, tie loose, coffee untouched. Elena entered quietly, carrying a tray. Mrs. Whitaker hissed under her breath, "You overstepped. You think because she stops crying for you, you matter?" Elena didn't look up. "I don't think. I know what the child needs." Across the table, Christopher's hand stilled on his mug. He should have fired her, ended it clean. Instead, he watched her, this woman who spoke without fear. Her calm unsettled him more than her defiance. That night, he lingered outside the nursery door. No crying, only a lullaby, soft and uneven, the sound of exhaustion and love. He knocked. Elena opened the door, shadows under her eyes, but a quiet grace in her face. "I wanted to thank you," he said stiffly. "You already did?" she replied, "by not interrupting." "You shouldn't have had to do it alone," he murmured. Her gaze held his. "Neither should you." When he left, she returned to the crib. The baby slept, her hand clutching Elena's finger. The room smelled faintly of milk and rain. Elena whispered, "You're safe now. I won't let anyone take you again." Down the hall, Christopher stood by the window, the storm clouds fading. He told himself he'd hired another employee. Nothing more. Yet something small and unfamiliar tugged in his chest. Guilt, maybe, or awe. He'd seen a strength that needed no title, a tenderness that refused to kneel. He couldn't stop seeing the way the baby had calmed in her arms, or the way Elena hadn't flinched at his anger. What he didn't know, what no one in the house yet knew, was that Elena Brooks wasn't who she seemed. The woman he'd called the help had once saved the life of his late wife. And buried beneath her silence was a secret powerful enough to unravel everything the Harrington Empire was built upon. By dawn, the mansion was quiet again. But for the first time in years, Christopher couldn't sleep. He kept hearing that lullaby, soft as breath, carrying a promise he didn't yet understand. It wasn't submission. It was strength. And it was coming for him. Morning light sliced through the heavy curtains of the Harrington mansion, catching in the dust and turning it to gold. Elena Brooks moved silently through the hall, her shoes soft against the marble. She carried a stack of linens, her mind fixed on the rhythm of her steps. Every corner of this house was polished to perfection. Everything except the people who lived inside it. In the nursery, little Emma lay awake, chewing on her blanket and babbling to herself. When Elena entered, the baby's eyes brightened. "Good morning, sunshine," she whispered, kneeling beside the crib. The child reached for her braid, and Elena let her tiny fingers tangle in it. The small weight of trust in that touch warmed her chest. Downstairs, Christopher Harrington stood by the window, phone in hand. "No, I'm not coming to the gala," he said sharply. "Tell them I'm busy." He hung up and exhaled, the tension still pulsing behind his eyes. Across the room, Mrs. Whitaker watched him with the blunt patience only age allowed. "She slept through the night," the housekeeper said quietly. "Because of her," Christopher muttered. "You don't like needing people, do you?" Mrs. Whitaker said. He turned. "No, people disappoint you." The old woman's gaze softened. "So does pride." He left before she could say more. When he entered the nursery, Elena was humming, the same lullaby from the night before. Emma reached for him but flinched when he drew closer. The rejection stung more than he expected. "She'll get used to you," Elena said, sensing his pause. Christopher forced a smile. "I came to apologize." "For yelling?" she asked. "For everything?" he said. She nodded slightly. "Then listen. Not to me. To her. She tells you what she needs every time she cries." He stood there longer than he meant to, watching her. She wasn't fragile like the women at his parties. Her strength was quiet, unspoken, the kind that demanded nothing yet changed everything. Later, in the laundry room, Elena heard his voice again, low, raw, through a half-closed door. "No, Jessica, I'm not meeting you. I can't pretend anymore. I have a daughter who cries all night unless a stranger holds her, and that stranger's the only one who makes her feel safe. Maybe the only one who makes me feel human." Elena froze, pulse quickening. The door creaked when she shifted. He turned. Their eyes met. "You weren't supposed to hear that," he said. "No one's supposed to hear the truth in this house," she replied. He rubbed his neck, voice rough. "I meant what I said. You didn't deserve how I treated you." Her tone stayed calm. "I wasn't asking for your respect. I was asking for kindness." A silence hung heavy between them, thick with something neither dared to name. "You could quit," he said. "After all this, no one would blame you." Elena lifted her chin. "I'm not here for you, Mr. Harrington. I'm here for your daughter." That night, the storm returned. Thunder rolled across the estate as Elena rocked Emma to sleep. Down the hall, Christopher stood outside, listening to the lullaby through the door. Each note scraped something loose in him, shame, longing, maybe hope. When the music faded, he whispered to himself, "She's not just the help." Upstairs, Elena laid the baby in her crib, then looked out the window. The rain streaked down the glass, relentless but cleansing. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, only that this house, this man, was shifting. And for the first time, the balance of power no longer belonged to the one who signed the checks, but to the one who could calm the storm. The third night settled over the Harrington mansion with uneasy calm. Rain whispered against the windows, steady as breath. Elena sat beside the crib, humming the same lullaby that had soothed Emma each night. The baby's fingers clutched her sleeve, the sound of her breathing soft and even. Outside the door, Christopher stood frozen, one hand hovering near the handle. He'd been there for nearly 10 minutes, caught between guilt and something he couldn't yet name. Finally, he knocked. "May I come in?" Elena didn't look up. "She's asleep. I won't wake her," he said softly. He stepped inside, shoulders tense beneath his white shirt. The warm light from the lamp blurred the sharpness of his face, revealing exhaustion more than anger. "I owe you an apology," he said finally, "for the things I said, for how I acted." Elena rose slowly, her calm unsettling. "You said what you meant. The truth always comes out when people are angry." He flinched. "I was wrong." Her tone softened, but her eyes didn't waver. "Apologies don't fix what's broken. Only consistency does." He looked down at his daughter, sleeping soundly. "When my wife died, I made this house a cage. I thought control could protect what I had left. But now," he trailed off, "she only sleeps when you're near. That's not chance." "She feels what you've forgotten," Elena said gently. "Safety, warmth, love that doesn't demand." He hesitated. "I think I've forgotten how to give that." "Then learn," she said quietly. "For her." He nodded once, voice barely audible. "And for me?" She looked at him steadily. "That's your work to do." When he left, the air seemed lighter, but neither of them slept. The next morning, rumors rippled through the halls. Mrs. Whittaker hissed to another maid, "She's got him twisted around her finger already." Elena ignored them, moving through the kitchen with quiet focus. In the dining room, Christopher sat alone, staring into a cup gone cold. "Morning," she said. He looked up, startled. "Morning." His voice was soft, almost human. Later that day, Rosa approached her near the back stairs. "You should be careful," she whispered. "Men like him, they don't fall gently. They crash." Elena sighed. "I'm not here for him, Rosa." "I know," the girl said. "But you're the only reason this place feels alive." That evening, while folding laundry, Elena heard Christopher's voice through the half-open study door. "No, I'm not meeting her," he said harshly. "Because there's someone here who makes me see everything differently." Her pulse quickened. When the floor creaked, he turned. Their eyes locked. "You weren't supposed to hear that," he said quietly. "No one hears much truth in this house," she replied. He rubbed his temples. "I meant what I said." Elena crossed her arms. "Then prove it, by being better for your daughter. Not for me." That night, she searched for Emma and found her in Christopher's arms. He sat by the fireplace, humming off key, eyes tired but gentle. The child was almost asleep, her fingers tangled in his shirt. He looked up, a shy, uncertain smile on his lips. "She cried until I tried your song." Elena stepped closer. "It suits you." "I doubt that." "It's not about sounding right," she said softly. "It's about meaning it." They stood together for a long time, watching the baby sleep. The rain outside softened into mist. For the first time, the house felt less cold, less guarded. And somewhere in that quiet room, between a grieving father and a woman he'd misjudged, something new began to take root. Something fragile, dangerous, and very much alive. Dawn broke over the Harrington estate, gray and quiet. The storm had passed, but its echo lingered in the walls. Elena moved through the kitchen early, preparing breakfast before anyone stirred. The smell of coffee and butter filled the air, but the silence was heavier than steam. Upstairs, Christopher hadn't left his office all night. When he finally appeared, his tie hung loose, his expression unreadable. "You didn't have to start this early," he said. "It's my job," Elena replied simply. He nodded, then hesitated. "About last night, thank you." "For what?" "For teaching me something I should have known already." Elena didn't smile. "You can't teach someone who doesn't want to learn." Then she turned back to her tray. Later that morning, Mrs. Whitaker approached her in the hallway. "He's different lately," she whispered. "You did that." Elena shook her head. "People don't change for others. They change when they can't stand who they were." Mrs. Whitaker gave a small, knowing look. "Maybe so, but some men only notice the light after walking through darkness." That evening, Christopher asked her to meet him in the study. The fire was lit, soft light flickering across the walls of old books and polished wood. "Sit," he said. "I want to show you something." On his laptop was a glowing screen filled with diagrams and notes. "I'm starting a new foundation," he said. "Programs for single parents, housing, legal support, jobs. My wife used to talk about it. I never listened." Elena's brow furrowed. "Why tell me?" "Because I need someone who understands what it's like to be ignored, to fight without being seen." She crossed her arms. "You think I'm that person?" "I know you are." She studied him for a moment, searching for arrogance and finding none. "I'm not a professional. I don't need professional," he said quietly. "I need honest." Outside, wind stirred the branches against the windows. Elena's voice was soft when she spoke. "If you're serious about this, don't build another wall and call it help. Build something human." He nodded slowly. "Then help me do that." Afterward, she returned to the nursery. Emma was awake, tiny fingers tapping the crib rail. "You have no idea what your father just did," Elena whispered, lifting her. "He might actually be learning." The next morning brought a fragile calm. For the first time, Christopher joined them for breakfast. Emma sat in her high chair, laughing as he tried to feed her oatmeal. The scene looked almost normal, ordinary even. But when Elena glanced at him, something flickered in his expression, something dangerously close to admiration. Later, Rosa found her polishing silverware. "The whole house is talking," she said with a grin. "They say the boss smiles now. It's weird." Elena chuckled. Maybe he remembered how. That night, Christopher stood outside her door, a book in his hand. "This was my wife's," he said, offering it to her. "She used to underline passages about courage. I think you'd like it." Elena took it carefully, her eyes softening. "Thank you." "She believed people come into your life twice," he said. "Once to break you, once to rebuild you." "Which am I?" she asked quietly. He hesitated. "Maybe both." When he left, Elena opened the book. Inside the cover, a note was scrawled in fading ink. "Courage isn't loud, it's steady." She traced the words with her thumb, feeling something stir, a memory of who she'd been before the world decided her worth. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the air still smelled like storm. Inside, a new current began to form, something unspoken, fragile, and unstoppable. Snow began to fall over the Harrington estate, soft and soundless, wrapping the roof and gardens in white. Inside, the fireplace crackled, and the scent of cedar drifted through the halls. Elena sat in the nursery beside Emma's crib, stitching a small tear in the child's blanket. Each pull of the needle was slow, deliberate, her mind heavy with thoughts she couldn't name. The door creaked. Christopher leaned against the frame, sleeves rolled, hair slightly disheveled. "You fix everything, don't you?" he said quietly. Elena didn't look up. "Only what's worth fixing." He stepped closer. "That's a longer list than you think." For a moment, neither spoke. The baby stirred, then sighed back into sleep. Christopher lowered his voice. "I wanted to thank you for what you said yesterday, about building something human. I thought about it all night." Elena smiled faintly. thinking's a start. He chuckled softly. You make it sound like I've got a long way to go. You do, she said, standing to place the finished blanket over Emma. But you're walking. The next morning, the house buzzed with new energy. Contractors arrived, blueprints spread across the dining table. Mrs. Whitaker muttered about chaos, while Rosa whispered to Elena, He's really doing it, this charity thing. Everyone says you inspired him. Elena shook her head. He did that himself. Rosa grinned. Still, it's nice watching a rich man sweat for something good. Later, Christopher called her into his office. The walls gleamed with modern screens and polished chrome, but his desk was cluttered with papers and coffee stains. I want you to look at something, he said, turning the monitor toward her. A digital layout appeared, colorful tabs labeled Support, Resources, Childcare. It's an app, he explained, a platform for single parents. We'll connect them to shelters, counseling, legal help. Elena crossed her arms. Why tell me? Because I don't want to build it wrong, he admitted. I've got money but not perspective. You've lived what I can only imagine. She studied him, wary but intrigued. You really think someone like me can help with this? I don't think. I know, he said. For the first time, Elena saw something raw in his face. Humility. It unnerved her more than anger ever had. That night, she couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling of her small room, thinking about every place she'd cleaned, every door she'd been told not to open. And now someone was asking her to lead. The thought frightened her. But beneath that fear, something new flickered, possibility. The next day, she joined him in the study. He gestured toward the screen again. I want to add a section, anonymous stories, real voices. Let people be heard. Elena nodded slowly. That's where healing begins. Not in pity, but in being seen. He smiled. Then we'll start there. Hours passed as they worked side by side, their voices low, the rhythm of typing blending with the soft crackle of the fire. At one point, Christopher leaned back, watching her with quiet curiosity. You know, he said, I built my company solving environmental problems, solar grids, carbon tracking. But the one thing I never solved was people. She looked up. Because people aren't systems. You can't fix them, you help them grow. He nodded slowly. Maybe that's what this is, growth. Or redemption, she murmured. As evening fell, the snow outside thickened. The house glowed with light. But inside the study, the world felt small and steady. Emma slept upstairs, Rosa hummed in the kitchen, and somewhere between broken trust and quiet understanding, something began to bloom. Not love yet, just recognition. And for the first time in years, Christopher Harrington didn't feel alone in his own house. The storm returned 3 nights later, turning the sky a bruised gray. Wind rattled the windows of the Harrington mansion as if demanding to be let in. Elena stood at the sink, rinsing bottles while the lights flickered. From the nursery came Emma's soft giggle, followed by Christopher's voice, low and clumsy, as he tried to read a bedtime story. You're skipping half the words, Elena called. He looked up from the doorway, grinning faintly. She doesn't know the difference. She will, Elena replied. Kids always notice effort. He chuckled. You really believe that? I have to, she said. It's what keeps me trying. When the power cut out moments later, the house sank into darkness. Emma started to cry. Christopher cursed under his breath, fumbling for his phone light. Where are the flashlights? Kitchen drawer, Elena said, already moving. I'll handle it. By the time she returned, the baby was screaming. Christopher paced, helpless. Elena lit a candle, its glow soft and gold against the storm outside. She reached for the child, humming gently until the sobs slowed. Christopher watched her in silence, his frustration fading into awe. "You always know what to do?" he said quietly. Elena smiled, faint but real. "No, I just never stopped doing something." For a long moment, they stood in that small circle of light, the babies breathing calm again between them. Outside, thunder rolled, distant now. Inside, the storm felt almost gentle. Later that night, Christopher found her in the kitchen, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. "I made coffee," he said, holding out a mug. "In a blackout?" she asked, amused. "Gas stove," he said with a shrug. "Survival instincts." She accepted the cup. "Not bad." "High praise from you," he teased. They sat at the counter in near silence, the candle between them flickering like a heartbeat. "You ever think about leaving?" he asked suddenly. Elena looked up. "Leaving this house?" "Leaving everything." She took a slow sip. "I used to, when life felt like something that happened to me instead of with me. And now? Now I stay because of her. And maybe," she paused, "because sometimes people deserve a second chance." Christopher's gaze softened. "Including me?" Elena didn't answer. Her silence said enough. The next morning, snow blanketed the grounds, pure and untouched. The mansion, however, buzzed with rare warmth. Rosa baked muffins. Mrs. Whittaker hummed off key. Even Christopher looked different, tired but lighter. He found Elena in the nursery, watching Emma play with wooden blocks. "She's getting stronger," he said. "She's safe," Elena replied. He nodded. "Because of you." "Because you let her be," she corrected. Later, he asked her to join him in his office. On the desk were sketches for the app's expansion, sections for caretakers, foster parents, volunteers. "I want it to include everyone who gives care," he said. "People like you." Elena frowned. "I'm not like them. They go home. I live here." He met her gaze. "Then maybe this is home." Her heart stilled. "Is that a job offer or something else?" He hesitated. "I'm offering a choice. Stay because you belong, not because you have to." She studied him carefully. "You shouldn't say things you don't mean." "I mean every word," he said softly. "But I'm not asking for an answer tonight." "Good," she said, "because I don't have one." That night, she stood by the nursery window as snow drifted past the glass. Behind her, Emma dreamed, her small hand resting on the stitched blanket. Down the hall, Christopher lingered outside, listening once more to the soft hum of Elena's voice, steady, strong, and far more powerful than she knew. 2 days later, sunlight returned to the Harrington estate. It glimmered on the snow-covered gardens and spilled into the nursery where Elena sat, sorting through Emma's toys. The baby was asleep in her crib, a faint smile playing on her lips. Downstairs, Christopher was on the phone, his tone steady, confident. Something in the house had shifted, less tension, more rhythm, like they were learning how to breathe in the same air. Elena stepped into the hallway just as Mrs. Whittaker approached, holding a steaming mug. "For you," the older woman said. "You look like you haven't stopped since dawn." "Thank you," Elena replied, taking the cup. Mrs. Whittaker studied her for a moment. "You're not like the others we've had here." Elena raised a brow. "Others?" "The ones who came for the paycheck or the name on the gate," she said softly. "They lasted weeks. You made this house quiet again." Elena smiled faintly. "Quiet isn't always peace." "No," Mrs. Whittaker said, "but it's a start." Later that morning, Christopher called her to his office. Papers and sketches were scattered across his desk, and his sleeves were rolled up. He looked up as she entered. "I want to show you something," he said. On the screen was a bright mock-up of their project, the app now taking shape. A new tab flashed in blue. Stories that matter. "What's that?" Elena asked. "Your idea," he said. "Anonymous spaces for people to speak freely. We're adding a feature for voice notes, just like you suggested." Her eyes widened. "You actually listened?" He smiled. "I do that sometimes." They spent the rest of the afternoon refining the layout. At one point, their hands brushed as they reached for the same paper. Both froze, then looked away. The silence that followed was heavier than words. When evening came, Elena checked on Emma. The child was standing in her crib, reaching toward the door. "Hi, sweetheart," she whispered, lifting her up. Emma cooed, tugging at her braid. "You missed me already?" Christopher appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame. "She always does that when she hears your voice." "She's learning habits," Elena said. "Ones I'll have to unteach later." "Don't," he said quietly. "Some things are worth keeping." For a while, the three of them stayed in the nursery. Christopher sat on the floor beside the rocking chair, while Elena hummed. Emma climbed into his lap, babbling nonsense, then squealed with delight when he made a funny face. Elena laughed softly, and Christopher froze at the sound. It was the first time he'd heard her laugh like that. Unguarded. Real. When the baby finally fell asleep, Elena stood to leave. "She's out," she whispered. Christopher didn't move. "Do you ever think about what you wanted before all this?" Elena hesitated. "Before cleaning houses? Before being the person everyone overlooks?" She looked down at her hands. "I wanted to be a nurse. Maybe a teacher. Then I realized dreams don't pay rent." He nodded slowly. "And now?" "Now," she said. "I just want to matter." "You do," he said. "More than you know." Her eyes met his, steady, cautious, but soft. "Don't say things like that unless you mean them." "I do," he said. "Every one of them." Elena stepped closer, then stopped herself. "Good night, Mr. Harrington." He smiled faintly. "Good night, Elena." As she walked back to her room, she felt something pull tight in her chest. It wasn't fear, it was the weight of being seen. For the first time in years, someone had spoken to her as if she was more than invisible. And though she didn't yet trust it, she could feel it beginning. The dangerous, tender edge of change. The following week, the mansion hummed with an unfamiliar warmth. The air no longer carried the edge of tension that once haunted its halls. Christopher had begun taking breakfast in the dining room again, trading phone calls for quiet moments with Emma, who now giggled at everything. Elena moved through the morning light like part of the rhythm itself, steady, gentle, necessary. One snowy afternoon, Rosa appeared at the nursery door. "He wants to see you," she whispered, "in his office." Elena frowned. "Now?" Rosa nodded. "He looks nervous." When Elena entered, Christopher was standing by the window, hands in his pockets. "I'm flying to New York next week," he said. "Investor meetings. I want you and Emma to come." Elena blinked. "You want me to what?" "Come with us," he repeated. "You'll help with Emma and, well, you'll be there for the app's presentation. It's your work, too." She hesitated. "I don't have a suit or experience." "I'll take care of that," he said. "What I can't take care of is trust. You've already earned that." For a moment, neither spoke. The snow outside glowed against the glass, soft and white. "Think about it," he said quietly. "No pressure." Elena turned to leave. "You should know," she said without looking back. "I don't follow anyone's script, not even yours." He smiled faintly. "That's exactly why I need you there," That night, she packed in silence, unsure if she was running towards something or away from it. The private jet left before sunrise. Emma slept in Elena's arms, her head nestled beneath a soft blanket. Christopher sat across from them, papers scattered on his lap, but his eyes kept drifting toward the pair. There was something grounding in the sight, something that made the noise in his mind fade. "First time flying?" he asked softly. Elena smiled. First time not escaping. In New York, the hotel suite gleamed with glass and gold. Emma toddled across the carpet, fascinated by her reflection in every mirror. Elena stood by the window, looking down at the city lights. "It feels too perfect," she murmured. Christopher joined her, holding 2 cups of tea. "Perfection's overrated. Reality's what keeps you awake." She glanced at him. "And what keeps you awake, Mr. Harrington?" He hesitated. Regret. That evening, while Emma slept, they stood together on the balcony overlooking the city. The wind tangled Elena's hair as she asked, "Why this project? Why now?" Christopher's voice lowered. "Because I failed my wife." She hid her pain behind calm smiles until it was too late. "I thought money could fix everything. I was wrong. This," he gestured toward the glowing skyline, "is my way of doing something that matters." Elena's throat tightened. "You're not the only one who's lost something." "I know," he said. "But maybe we can turn loss into purpose." The next day, Elena joined him at the conference. The boardroom was filled with sharp suits, polished voices, and skeptical eyes. Christopher introduced her. "This is Elena Brooks," he said. "She's the reason this app has meaning." Dozens of eyes turned to her. For a second, fear prickled her skin, but she stood tall. "I used to think surviving was enough," she said. "But surviving isn't living. People like the ones we're trying to help, they need to be seen, not fixed." The room went quiet. Then someone began to clap. One by one, others followed. Christopher's eyes found hers, pride flickering there, quiet and real. That night, as the city glittered below, Elena tucked Emma into the crib beside her hotel bed. She looked toward the skyline, her reflection merging with the lights. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was standing outside of life, watching it through glass. She was in it, messy, fragile, and alive. The next morning, sunlight poured through the hotel curtains, washing the room in pale gold. Elena woke to the sound of Emma's laughter. The baby was standing in her crib, waving a stuffed giraffe in triumph. Across the room, Christopher was already dressed, tie straight, eyes bright. "You ready for day 2, partner?" he asked. Elena smiled sleepily. "Partner sounds generous." "You earned it," he said. "You spoke yesterday like you'd done it your whole life." "I was terrified," she admitted. "Good," he said. "Fear means you care." Downstairs, the hotel restaurant buzzed with morning chatter. As they sat, Christopher slid a newspaper across the table. The headline read, "Billionaire and former Maid launch new social platform for parents." Elena froze. "You told them about me?" He shook his head. "I didn't have to. Someone did their research." Her eyes darkened. "Now they'll twist it." "Then let them," he said calmly. "We know the truth." Later that afternoon, she joined him at another meeting, this time with journalists and investors. They asked about her past, how she went from cleaning houses to sitting beside a billionaire. She met each question with poise. "Sometimes life gives you doors," she said. "You just have to stop waiting for someone else to open them." By the end of the day, even the skeptics were nodding. That evening, after Emma fell asleep, Elena stepped onto the balcony again. The city below shimmered like an ocean of light. Christopher joined her, 2 mugs in hand. "I thought you didn't drink coffee at night," she said. He smiled. Couldn't sleep anyway. For a while they just stood there, the hum of the city surrounding them. Then he spoke softly. "I haven't told anyone this before. My wife didn't die in an accident. She ended her life." Elena turned, startled. His voice stayed low but steady. "I was too busy running my empire, too proud to see she was drowning right beside me. That's why this project matters. If she'd had a place to speak, to be heard, maybe she'd still be here." Elena's throat tightened. "You can't change the past." "No," he said. "But I can change what silence does to people." She looked at him, really looked. "You're not the same man I met in that mansion. I'm trying not to be." The next morning, she followed him into the conference hall. It was the final day of presentations, the moment investors would decide the fate of their project. Christopher started strong, his voice confident, his vision clear. But when it was her turn, Elena hesitated. All those faces, all those expectations, it felt like standing on a cliff. Then she saw Emma through the glass wall of the nursery nearby, laughing with Rosa, who had joined them for the trip. Something in that tiny smile steadied her. Elena spoke. "When I came to the Harrington house, I was invisible. People saw my uniform before they saw me. But a crying child changed that. She reminded me that compassion doesn't ask for permission, it simply acts. That's what this app is built on, action, not pity." When she finished, the room was silent. Then applause broke out, louder than before. Christopher's hand brushed hers beneath the table, subtle but sure. That night, back in the suite, he turned to her. "You realize you closed that deal, not me." She smiled faintly. "Guess I should start asking for a raise." He laughed, softer than she'd ever heard. "Whatever you ask for, I'll find a way to give." Later, after he'd gone, Elena stood by the crib, watching Emma sleep. Outside, snow fell gently across the city. Inside, something deeper settled. A quiet knowing that her life was no longer something to endure. It was something she was finally shaping with her own hands. 2 weeks later, the last of the snow began to fade from the Harrington Gardens. The once barren grounds glistened with patches of wet earth, and the mansion, so long a monument to grief, seemed to exhale at last. Inside, laughter echoed through the halls. Emma toddled across the foyer in pink socks, giggling as Elena chased after her with a towel. "Slow down, troublemaker," Elena said, scooping her up. Christopher looked up from the staircase landing, sleeves rolled, a rare lightness softening his face. "She's faster every day." "She gets that from you," Elena said. He chuckled. "Let's hope not." The warmth between them was quiet, but real. Months ago, this house had been a cage. Now, it sounded like life again. That evening, Christopher called her to the study. A stack of folders covered the desk, their corners marked with colored tabs. "We did it," he said, handing her one. "The foundation's been approved. We're live in a month." Elena opened the file carefully. The title glimmered in silver letters, "The Unity Project." "It's official," she whispered. Christopher nodded. "And it's yours as much as mine." Her eyes lifted, uncertain. "That's not how the world sees it. Then we'll change how the world looks." But not everyone shared his optimism. The next morning, Mrs. Whittaker found Elena in the kitchen. "He's made enemies," the older woman murmured. "Some board members think you've softened him." Elena frowned. "Is compassion a weakness now? To men who live on pride, It always is, Mrs. Whitaker said quietly. By noon, the tension cracked. Christopher paced his office, phone buzzing nonstop. They want me to replace you, he said finally. The investors think you make me look sentimental. Elena's voice stayed calm. Because I used to mop their floors? Because you remind them that power isn't inherited, it's earned, he replied. She crossed her arms. Then decide, Mr. Harrington. What kind of man do you want to be? That afternoon, he called a board meeting. The room felt like ice. 12 sharp suits, 12 sharper eyes. Elena sat at the far end, quiet but unflinching. One gray-haired executive sneered, Christopher, we don't run this company on charity. You're letting your emotions dictate policy. He leaned forward. Empathy is an emotion. It's perspective. And if that's a problem, maybe you're in the wrong business. The man scoffed. You can't expect us to take advice from a maid. Elena rose slowly. Then don't, she said. Take it from a woman who spent her life cleaning up after people who confuse cruelty with strength. The silence that followed was absolute. Someone shifted. Another cleared his throat. Then Christopher stood. Meeting adjourned. The project stands. Afterward, he found Elena by the window. Her hands trembled, but her eyes were steady. You didn't have to do that, he said softly. I didn't do it for you, she replied. I did it because someone had to. He smiled faintly. You always do. That night, they ate dinner in the kitchen with Rosa and Emma. The pasta was overcooked, the sauce too sweet, but laughter filled the room like music. Emma clapped her hands as Christopher pretended to sneeze noodles. Elena laughed, the sound soft and bright. When the house grew quiet, Christopher looked at her across the table. You belong here, he said. She shook her head. I don't belong anywhere. I just stay where I'm needed. His gaze held hers. Then I hope we keep needing you. Outside, the last snow melted under a rising moon. Inside, the firelight shimmered across walls that once held only echoes. The mansion finally felt alive again, and for the first time, Elena believed she did too. Spring arrived early that year, painting the Harrington gardens with soft green and yellow. The air carried the scent of thawing soil and lilacs drifting through the open windows of the mansion. Elena stood on the back patio with Emma in her arms, watching the child reach toward a butterfly. Gentle, sweetheart, she murmured. You'll scare it. Behind her, Christopher stepped outside holding 2 mugs of tea. She's fearless, he said. She gets that from her father, Elena replied. He smiled. You make that sound like a compliment. Maybe it is. For a while, they watched the butterfly vanish over the hedges, the silence between them easy now. Months ago, they'd filled it with anger or apology. Now it felt like understanding. Inside, the foundation office buzzed with energy. Rosa had been promoted to assistant coordinator. Mrs. Whitaker oversaw outreach calls, and Elena split her time between caring for Emma and helping shape the program. In one meeting, Christopher presented new features for the Unity Project: real-time mentorship, job connections, and emergency support for single parents. Afterward, Elena caught him in the hallway. You're turning this into something bigger than either of us. He shrugged. You gave it a heartbeat. I just built the walls. She shook her head. You built doors. But peace never lasted long in the Harrington world. That evening, a car pulled up to the gate, a sleek black sedan with tinted windows. The driver stepped out first, followed by a woman Elena didn't recognize. Her coat was camel-colored, her posture crisp, her beauty precise. When she spoke, her voice cut through the air. I'm looking for Christopher Harrington. Inside, Christopher froze when Rosa announced the visitor's name. Clara Morgan. Elena felt her chest tighten. She didn't need to ask who Clara was. The look on Christopher's face told her everything. Moments later, they met in the foyer. Clara's smile was rehearsed, but her eyes darted toward the staircase. "I heard about the foundation," she said smoothly. "It's impressive. You're finally doing something real." Christopher's tone was polite but wary. "Why are you here, Clara?" "I came to see Emma." The air stilled. Elena stepped forward before she could stop herself. "Emma's asleep," she said. Clara's gaze flicked toward her. "And you are?" "Elena Brooks," she said evenly. "I take care of your daughter." "Of course you do," Clara murmured, the words laced with disdain. Christopher stepped between them. "Clara, this isn't the time." But Clara only smiled. "Every time is the time when it comes to my child." Against Elena's protest, Christopher brought Clara upstairs. The moment Emma saw her, she froze, unsure. Clara knelt, arms open. "Hi, baby. Mommy's here." But Emma whimpered, turning instead toward Elena. When the child reached out, Clara's smile faltered. "She doesn't remember me," she whispered. "She remembers who stayed," Elena said quietly. Clara stood, her composure cracking. "You've made her forget me." "No," Christopher said firmly. "You did that when you left." Minutes later, Clara was gone. The house fell silent again, but the damage lingered. In the nursery, Elena held Emma close, feeling the tremor in the child's body. "You're safe," she whispered. "No one's taking you away." Downstairs, Christopher poured a drink he didn't touch. When Elena appeared in the doorway, he said softly, "I'm sorry you had to see that." "She doesn't scare me," Elena said, "but she hurt her daughter." He nodded slowly. "And me." Elena moved closer, her voice gentle but firm. "Then don't repeat her mistake. Love what's in front of you before it learns to stop reaching back." He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, she saw no armor, just a man stripped of everything but truth. Outside, the night wind stirred through the lilacs, carrying the scent of something ending and something else just beginning. The morning after Clara's visit, the house felt hollow again. Even Emma was quiet, clinging to Elena's leg as if afraid she might disappear. Outside, a pale sun broke through the clouds, but it brought no warmth. Christopher hadn't slept. He stood at the window of his study, the untouched coffee cooling beside him. When Elena entered, he turned slowly, his eyes tired but resolute. "I'm not letting her take Emma," he said. "She won't," Elena replied softly. "But you can't fight fear with anger." He looked at her. "Then what do I fight it with?" "Love," she said simply. "The kind that stays." That afternoon, reporters swarmed the front gates. News of Clara's visit had leaked, headlines twisting their story into something sensational. Billionaire torn between ex-wife and former maid. Rosa hurried inside, breathless. They're everywhere. Cameras, questions, chaos. Christopher rubbed his temples. "Of course they are." Elena's voice stayed calm. "Then we control the story. Not by hiding, by telling the truth." By evening, Christopher called a press conference at the Foundation's office. Cameras flashed as he stepped to the podium, Elena standing just behind him. "I built this company chasing perfection," he began. "But perfection isn't real. People are. This woman beside me, Elena Brooks, has shown me that integrity isn't in wealth, it's in compassion." Reporters murmured, scribbling. Christopher continued, steady. "I'm not ashamed of who she is. She's the heart of this project, And the reason my daughter laughs again, we're not a scandal. We're a family learning how to heal. The applause began hesitantly, then grew. Elena felt tears prick her eyes, but she stood tall. The truth had finally been spoken aloud. When they returned home, the world outside buzzed with gossip. But inside, there was only peace. Emma slept soundly in her crib, her little hand clutching the edge of her blanket. Christopher lingered in the doorway, watching. "You were right," he said quietly. "Love stays." Elena turned to him. "It's not perfect. It's just honest." He smiled faintly. "That's enough." Weeks passed. The noise faded. The board backed down, the public softened, and the Unity Project flourished. Each day, more families reached out, parents, caretakers, strangers seeking light in dark places. Elena watched it grow from her small desk by the nursery window, the laughter of a child always nearby. One evening, Christopher found her there, typing reports by lamplight. "You're still working?" "Almost done," she said. "These stories deserve to be told." He leaned against the doorway. "You ever think about what comes next?" She smiled. "For me, or for us?" "Both." "I want to start a new branch," she said. "A place for women like me. Ones who've been invisible too long. A foundation that teaches them they're more than survival." He nodded slowly. "Then let me help." "No," she said, standing. "Let me build this one." He looked at her, pride flickering behind his fatigue. "Then I'll be beside you when you do." Later that night, the two of them sat outside on the patio as the stars came out. Emma slept upstairs, and the soft hum of the city drifted in from afar. "You ever think about how far we've come?" Christopher asked. Elena nodded, from silence to something real. He reached for her hand, to everything real. The night was quiet but full. The kind of quiet that wasn't empty anymore. It was peace earned through storm. Elena leaned her head against his shoulder, the scent of lilac lingering in the air. She thought of the first night she'd walked into this house, trembling under his anger, and smiled. The walls had witnessed cruelty, grief, and pride, but also growth, forgiveness, and love. Somewhere inside, a baby sighed in her sleep. And for the first time, the Harrington mansion no longer echoed with ghosts. It pulsed with life. If this story moved you, share your thoughts below. Tell us where you're watching from. And remember, sometimes the quietest kindness changes everything.